Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Friday today. I am joined here by Olivia, who is Stream Dental HR's HR strategist. So she wanted to jump on today and talk a little bit more about the recent updates that have been going on right now and all of the new programs that are going to be launching on Monday, all the questions that are racing through our minds on what's available, what do I do, what's best for me and for the practice, and how can I best utilize these. So Olivia, let's start diving in. So I know we're preparing for a big week next week, right? With the CERB or CERB.
Yeah.
All these acronyms. So the application is starting to open up on Monday. And I'm sure has been a lot of conflicting information out there about what to do now with EI. So what do employees need to know before the process begins?
Yeah, well, this is certainly a tricky topic to navigate based on the fact that there are so many individual factors that we need to account for when we're determining eligibility for these programs. So I guess what we can do today is kind of walk through a couple of the most prominent situations. We'll be able to help people from there. So let's start off by talking about employment insurance, or EI. So with EI and COVID-19, there's basically two different applications. So there's one application for if you're sick, if you're injured, or if you're under some sort of mandatory quarantine. And then there's another application if you're laid off because your workplace is closed down.
Okay.
So to be eligible for EI, you must have been paying into the program or have received employment via some form of insurable employment. So in this case, you didn't lose your job because you were at fault of some form of misconduct. And also to be eligible, you have to have worked the required number of insurable hours in the last 52 weeks or since your last EI claim if you've already been on EI before. So the required number of insurable hours varies depending on your region, but is, as a ballpark, usually between 420 and 700 insurable hours in the last year of employment. So employees that are eligible should be applying through the regular EI applications until Monday. And then as of Monday, this will turn into a combined CERB and EI application zone. So now the reason that I recommend that you apply for EI if you are eligible for it is that the CERB is only right now ready to subsidize for 16 weeks. So if you're eligible for EI and there's a chance that you may be out of work for more than 4 months, then you would be able to go back to receiving your regular EI benefits once the term of the CERB is complete. Now, based on your region, the regional unemployment rate, and the number of insurable hours you have worked, EI may be applicable to your specific situation for up to 45 weeks. Whereas the CERB, like I just said, is only ready to subsidize for 16 weeks. Okay. So that's kind of the main distinction that we need to make sure that employees and employers are aware of. And now we can also talk a little bit more about the CERB term for it. So this program has been created for those individuals who are not eligible for EI. So this includes those that are self-employed and have had to close down shop. So applications for this do open up on Monday, like you just said. However, the government is only processing applications on certain days of the week based on your month of birth to try to accommodate for the sheer magnitude of responses and applications that are going to come in next week, right?
Yeah.
So they've broken it up into the standard quarters. So March, you can apply on Mondays starting on April 6th. April to June, you can apply on Tuesdays. July to September, you can apply on Wednesdays. And October through December, you can apply on Thursdays. If you missed your application day, don't worry. You can apply on Friday to Sunday. So that's open for any birth month. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And then the CERB has been created for those that are off work and ineligible for standard EI subsidies. So this is, again, why we talked about applying for EI if you can. If you're ineligible, then the CERB would be your route that you want to go on. So there's no waiting period required for this benefit, as it is the same as EI. There's no waiting period required anymore. And payments should be received within 10 days of an approved application. So not 10 days from when you apply, but 10 days from when you receive that approval. Now, also something important to remember is that applications for the SERB actually need to be resubmitted every 4 weeks. So this is to account for any businesses that will be able to reopen during this time. So overall, we're hoping that we will be able to see next month that some operations are able to reopen with a limited staff, and hopefully they'll get more people back to work to limit the overall financial devastation that COVID-19 is causing on a national level. So that's why they are requiring that reapplication every 4 weeks. We've also had many questions in the last couple of days about the rates of EI versus the SERB. And then the government has announced yesterday that they will be changing the benefit to be $500 weekly for all approved applications, either for EI or the SERB. So in this case, some people might see that their EI payments, if they're already on it, they might increase if they were below the $500 threshold, or if they're at the topper limit of that at $573 weekly, then they'll see them decrease a little bit. So, but this is only for the next 16 weeks, and really only time will tell if this needs to continue on past 16 weeks, but that's what the SERB is prepared to supply for.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of information.
I know it's a lot to process.
Well, thanks for walking through that. And I think there was a lot of great points on there of things to know, things to be aware of when, this program does come available on Monday. But what about wage subsidies? I know we're hearing a lot of conflicting information about that too, and how to properly apply for those wage subsidies. So can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that we're getting so much conflicting information is because it's changing so rapidly. So for instance, with the wage subsidies, one day they announced that it would be a 10% subsidy, and then a couple of days later, they came out with an additional up to 75% subsidy. So the government is doing everything that they can to get these programs ready. And that's why, one day you check the news and you get this information, and 3 days later, it's completely different. So it's all a matter of just checking your sources and making sure that you're going with the most up-to-date information that's usually provided on the Government of Canada website. So again, with the wage subsidies, this is another question that really has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So as a rule, you have to be able to show that your revenues have dropped by at least 30% across the same period of time as last year. So for example, the first period that we can analyze is from March 15th through to April 11th. So that 4-week period. So then to determine your eligibility, you will look at your revenues from those 4 weeks in 2019 and compare them to this year. So if you're operating at 70% or less revenues presently, then you can apply for the wage subsidy if you still have employees working. Now, currently this program will be available for another 2 separate 4-week periods. So the second one will start April 12th and go till May 9th, and then again from May 10th to June 6th. And if you haven't been in business for at least a year, we recommend that you take a look at your last 6 months of revenues and see if you can determine kind of an average monthly revenue that you were experiencing before March 2020. And you can use this as a reasonable benchmark to determine your eligibility for this program. I know there was some information presented a couple of days ago that was misunderstood, and we've received some questions about this benefit already. So the goal of the wage subsidy is to keep as many Canadian workers still employed as possible and keep as many Canadian small businesses open as possible. So this doesn't mean that you should apply for these wage subsidies to continue to pay your staff if they're not working. That's when they would have to go on EI or with the SERB application. However, there is a little bit of a workaround here, so we might have to get a little creative as to what your staff can be doing. So you might not be able to see patients right now, but could your dental assistants and your hygiene team start to help with some administration tasks? Can you still do some staff meetings? Can you go through your employee files, get everything organized, find out when people's licenses are due, find out when their CPR needs to be renewed? So all this organizational sort of aspect, the behind the scenes that we don't really have time to work on. Now is the time that you can get your team to actually do that. Another idea is team training. Maybe there's a course that you've always wanted your team to complete, but you just haven't had the time to do it, right? Or what about social media, marketing, your website? Like there's so many different opportunities. If you're creative, you can actually get your staff members working. So there's so many ways that you can work on your business, even when you're not working within it and actually seeing patients on a day-to-day basis. But overall, our main our recommendation is to only apply for that wage subsidy if your team is actually working.
Okay. So I don't know if you've already answered this question, but what will happen if I apply for the wage subsidies, but my employees aren't working?
So this is really important to know, actually. One of the fine points of the Canada Employee Wage Subsidy states that employers cannot claim the wage subsidy for an employee in a week that falls within a 4-week period during which the employee is eligible. So employers who are not eligible for the wage subsidy program can still furlough employees who will receive funding under the CERB guidelines. So the second point listed after this is that employers who receive the wage subsidy but are not in fact eligible. So if your employees are laid off and they're not working, you are not eligible for this program. In that case, if you apply for it and you receive that funding, you will be responsible for repaying the wage subsidy back to the government and additionally paying their employees accordingly. So in this case, will likely apply to fraudulent claims, and anti-abuse fines may be proposed as well. New offenses may be created for individuals, employers, or business administrators who provide false or misleading information to obtain access to this benefit, or who misuse any of the funds obtained under this program. And the penalties in this case may include additional fines or even imprisonment.
Wow.
So this is a very important point to make, is we need to ensure that all employees are categorized under the right benefit based on the individual conditions that are taking place right now, so that we are not unknowingly committing fraud based on poor news reporting.
That's a very important point, and that's crazy to know, like what kind of penalties are in place.
Yeah.
So in that way, we don't want to put ourselves in any trouble, especially with the government, because anytime you owe money to the government, they're going to find you and get that money back.
Exactly.
So let's make sure that we don't put ourselves in those sticky situations. So thanks for bringing that out. So what can we do right now to be proactive in the next week while the new support measures are slowly coming out, all the details and everything's being implemented?
Yeah, so this goes back to kind of the same advice that we have been talking about over the last few weeks and broadcasting. Is it's so important right now to just really keep in touch with your team, obviously, but also keep in touch with your employment lawyer, accountant, your insurance brokers, and any HR reps or consultants that you're working with, because we are experts in the field and are here to provide the best advice to keep you and your business as safe and as protected as possible during this time.
Definitely. There's, like you said, now we've got the time to be able to do that. So let's take advantage of that and build an even more stronger and profitable business than we were before. So great advice. Is there any kind of like overview that you can give us of the most common scenarios as things look right now?
Yeah, so based on the, I guess the questions that we've been receiving in the last week, we've kind of been able to make a list of these sort of scenarios that people are going through. So we'll go through them briefly here, so that can kind of provide a little bit of a guide of where to go next. So, for example, if you have an employee that is sick, injured, or under quarantine and is eligible for EI, they're going to apply for medically related EI. If you have an employee that is laid off because the practice is closed and is also eligible for EI, they're going to apply for non-medical related EI.
Okay.
Now, if you have an employee that's laid off because the practice is closed and they're not eligible for EI, they're going to apply for the CERB. Okay. If you have an employee that has to stay home because of school closures, they have to take care of their kids at home, they can apply for the CERB.
Okay.
If you have an employee that's still working either remotely or regularly and your revenues for this period of time are still down at least 30%, you can apply for the wage subsidy.
Okay.
If you have an employee that's still working either remotely or regularly and your revenues aren't down, then you continue your business as usual, but obviously proceed with caution to maintain that healthy and safe workplace for your employees. And then the last point that we've been receiving is if you need to reduce your employees' hours and your revenues are not down at least 30%, this would be the point where you want to create a work share program. And another question, just to go back to kind of our earlier point about EI and the CERB, another question that we had was if receiving the CERB would affect future EI eligibility for those that haven't already been approved for EI. Okay, so this would be if they applied for the CERB right now, in 16 weeks, that benefit is done. And then would they be able to go on EI at that point? And the answer is yes. Okay, so prior receipt of the CERB does not impact EI entitlement at all. And I think that's kind of all the scenarios that I can think of based on what we have been asked this week already.
I know, and it's just this week already seems like a blur. I was telling you this morning, I totally thought it was Saturday.
This week feels like a month. Yeah.
And I don't know how many lives, how many webinars and info sessions have we been doing for the last 3 weeks. I'm pretty sure we've done at least 2 or 3 a day for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So
it's been
yeah,
crazy.
it's been
We're
a
trying
lot.
to reach as many people as we can, right? Like just trying to help in any way we know how.
Yes, so I appreciate you taking the time to put this all together, because, like you said, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of misunderstandings about
Yeah.
those information as well, and misinterpretations about it. So we definitely want to make sure that we do our due diligence. Also, reach out to other professionals that you're working with, your accountant, employment lawyers, us. We're here to be able to support you when it comes to understanding the policies, the people, and the process of all of this. So thanks again, Olivia, for joining us today and going through all of that. And if there's any questions that you guys have, please feel free to comment, reach out to us, so we can see how we can help you in other ways. But thanks, Olivia. Get some rest this weekend. You deserved it. Like, you've worked so hard over the last few weeks. And thanks for all of the support that you've been giving to not only our clients, but as many people as possible. So thanks again for that.
No problem. Happy to help.
Bye.